Hello everyone. This is the Diploma School introduction as part of the virtual Open Day. And I'm Kostas, I'm teaching at Diploma Unit 2.
This is Shinya Gashira, who also teaches in Diploma School, Unit 11.
I'm Vasilisa, I'm a former graduate.
And I'm Rafael, also a former graduate.
What we wanted to do in the beginning was to show you, or actually rather to explain a few things and discuss the structure of the Diploma School as well as, let's say, its kind of main features, and also kind of show you some images about the Diploma School and like the spaces and all of the activities that are taking place throughout the year. So if we can switch over to the slideshow, basically the Diploma School takes over like part of the actually almost all of the buildings that the AA consists of in Bedford Square. It's mainly kind of situated on the third floor, and is basically around 3 or 4 years ago, or maybe even longer, it was connected by this very long corridor that you see on the screen that is actually connecting all of the diploma units together.
So there is 18 units currently, and each unit have 12 to 13 students, which is quite characteristic. We imagine there is over 50 different nationality sharing same interest and idea and methodology provided by different unit, and work together for a year as a kind of research as well as joint experimentations. So those different characteristics and diversity makes diploma schools as a whole very unique.
And more specifically, each unit typically consists of 12 students. They kind of are both from 4th and 5th year. When you graduate from diploma school, you kind of receive the ARB RIBA Part 2 qualification, which is a professional qualification. And basically, usually kind of what tends to happen is that there is an equal kind of like split between kind of 4th and 5th year in the units. However, depending on kind of how many people subscribe to the unit at the beginning of the year, this can vary slightly as well. Sometimes you get more 5th year students in the unit, others more 4th years. But the actual kind of number is 12 people, and this is how the actual unit is structured.
Mm-hmm. Throughout the year, each unit have a certain timings of the pin-up seminar, and also have a regular jury which inviting each other from different unit or expanding their kind of critical aspect of the work. At the same time, there are actually certain set of structure to share as open jury week, where different units get together to discuss their work. So in a way, diversity of each unit is also responsible to as a school, where director of the school to make sure that there is a series of contemporary issues being covered. And therefore, students may also have a responsibility to choose the unit. Some students choose to stay for 4th and 5th year, or some students switching the unit from one topic or one context to the other. So in that sense, which maintain as a school as a dynamism, at the same time, certain strengths and depths being provided, reinforced by different character of or approach of the unit to work. Yeah.
So in terms of also how each year is run, basically 4th and 5th year, they share the same brief within the unit. However, they differentiate slightly in terms of the actual complementary studies that they participate in. 4th year, they have 2 studies to do in term 1, history and theory, and another 2 kind of submissions to do in term 2. Whereas in the 5th year, there's professional practice as well as something that's quite fundamental to the actual kind of unit coursework, which is the technical thesis and technical studies that you see a picture of. And the technical studies, let's say, culminate in a kind of exhibition towards the mid or beginning of term 3, where all of the actual kind of or the work that has been kind of nominated for high pass is kind of exhibited to the whole school and the AA kind of community at large. As Shin also explained, there's kind of open juries. This happened once or twice during the year. That's when different units from Diploma, Intermediate, as well as the postgraduate program come together to discuss kind of work and themes that are evolving within the school and the units as well. And also one other thing that is quite kind of, let's say, fundamental and to the school and quite different to other schools is the fact that students actually present their own work during the assessments as opposed to tutors presenting their work. This happens twice in the year. One is what you see in the image, which are the actual previews that happen at the end of term 2 before the Easter break, and usually kind of take place at the lecture hall. And then there is also kind of the end of year kind of tables that for the 5th year take place in the library. This has been kind of quite old established traditions, so to speak, of the school. And this is where you actually kind of get to present your kind of final thesis project to a panel of other tutors. Yeah. So what we actually wanted to do now is to switch over to our former students from last year, so you can actually get to see some of the work that each unit is kind of produces. One thing that also needs to be said is that what you're going to see is just kind of representing a small part of the kind of diversity of the work that we do at the Diploma School. The approaches are very different from unit to unit. So this is kind of by no means something that kind of, let's say, encompasses all of the work. It's just kind of a small sample.
I suppose so these two projects probably not entirely present diversity of the work and approach. I suppose so there's two outstanding examples. But also just mention about the amount of work goes into the portfolio, which is actually show the last image of diploma review, which it's about assessment as well as the body of the work student present, which is actually measuring kind of our criteria, the diploma somehow. So, okay.
So I graduated from Diploma 11, Shin's unit, and my project was called Dusty Topographies. And if we can go to Arbion screen, yeah. So dust is an ephemeral element of the environment that within the street Hoover is collected and compacted through a specific choreography of stages. And once it's accumulated, the presence of dust is more apparent and visible as a compacted sediment of the environment. Therefore, just as dust, urban dusts or urban byproducts broken down to components during the process of demolition and compacted over time create a sediment of the city's formation with their local environments reflecting within their materiality. So dusty topography is a construction strategy that uses the conditions imposed by ongoing demolitions through materialization of the erased with an aim to create a connecting landscape of urban dusts. And the process of creating that landscape follows the stages of selective demolition, material filtration, organization, and as a temporary layer of landscape construction and construction of the landscape itself as its final outcome. So located in the south of London, in Deptford, master planning of Conway's Wharf affected development of 6 additional planning proposals in the surrounding area. And these master plans are being closed off from the public for another period of time while simultaneously proposing a strategy for cultural regeneration without a specific plan for integrating the local community into the regeneration plan, while shifting the idea of the physical boundary towards the boundary of ownership and economic opportunity. So in order to integrate them, the project is proposing that all the erased components of the urban fabric remain on site in the close proximity of the development area in form of a connecting landscape that is penetrating through the boundary of Conway's Wharf and allowing for continuous exchange. So in this cross-exchange scheme, demolished facilities of current cultural production, such as community centers, schools, and public spaces, are placed within the perimeter of Conway's Wharf, and future facilities are placed within the local surrounding area prior to their development, since the integration of the new requires for their temporary integration within the old. So throughout the year, I was interested in the idea of how the temporary conditions imposed by demolitions could be translated into a system that uses their existence and progression and transforms them into a strategy of constructing an ongoing landscape, as well as how these temporary conditions could create active spaces across the urban fabric. Therefore, the cycle from moment when a building is being created, when a building is being demolished until the moment of landscape construction are equally important, because all the stages together are creating the ongoing cyclical landscape of construction. During demolition, different sequences are taking place at different times, and the strategy is a choreography of stages, as I said before, and starting from demolition, material organization, and filtration across different locations. And since the construction of the landscape is characterized by long-term and slow processes due to its dependence on duration of demolitions and material deliveries, the landscape is being constructed in levels where each of them during their construction provides temporary places of occupation. As the first layer is being constructed, the foundation of the skeleton is marking the places where the erased material will be disposed, and as the construction continues, formwork for the rest of the structure is being added, and the pockets of spaces for temporary occupation are created, providing the spaces for facilities that are being erased from the urban fabric due to the regeneration processes. So this space of exchange is characterized through juxtapositions of different materials and their use, as well as the temporary programs that are being exchanged over time and at different levels as the landscape is constructed vertically, actually compacted vertically through the delivery of these erased components. And it is a microcosm of material exchange between two sides, but also a microcosm of exchange of two types of cultures as it merges and bridges the two opposing communities, the old and the new community. And while the construction is happening over the existing historical site, it's covering the old archaeological findings while evolving with the context as it collects the erased. And as it constructed at irregular times, the outlines of spaces and zones for material disposal across the site change as the construction continues, creating a landscape of constant movement and action. So boundary within this landscape is constantly negotiated through construction and materialization of the erased, and therefore the strategy of breaking the boundary culminates in the creation of the open environment, built upon the residue of urban development, where the culture is being exchanged through juxtaposed engagements and negotiation, and over a long period of time creates a topography of urban formation. Thank you.
Yeah, one thing to mention as well is if you might have any questions, you can use the chat function to kind of ask us anything that you might want to know about the Diploma School, and also we can also answer emails after the actual kind of event later today. So Rafael is going to be presenting his work.
So hi, I'm Rafael, and I'm a graduate of Kostas's unit, Diploma Unit 2. And I'll be presenting the project on the screen, if we can switch. So the project was titled Living Skins, and it questions the human-centric nature of architecture through the redesign of New York's Park Lane Hotel as a vertical habitat. It proposes the design of a space where we can confront with the edge and challenge some of the psychological and physical boundaries separating humans from non-humans. In the process, the project also engages with potential material and spatial qualities that emerge from the consideration of animals in the design of buildings. So while the animal world is governed by notions of regions, fields, and territories, boundaries in architecture are far more absolute. The Park Lane Hotel sits on the clear line demarcating where Central Park ends and where the city begins. Architecture, in its clear compartmentalization of space, also fragments and excludes habitat, prevent access and the freedom of movement for animals. From a material perspective, flat, smooth, and impermeable surfaces, which characterize the available formats of concrete, glass, and steel, remain uninhabited and clean over time. These make up the hotel's facade and provide it with a hermetic seal. From within, guests are provided with comfortably sanitary rooms and unobstructed views of the park. Yet at the same time, one could also say that these rooms are generic and very much detached from the rich context in which they reside. Alternatively, the project proposes to extend the park experience beyond that of the image and to invite some of the park species and their associated environments into the hotel in order to enrich it spatially, programmatically, and experientially. So to better our understanding of the role that architecture plays in mediating our relationship to animals, we can look at zoos. And having visited the London Zoo, I identified 3 conditions which characterize this unique form of architecture and feed directly into the design of the project. First, the condition of spatial collapse. So within the walls of the zoo, environments traditionally considered exterior are interiorized, and vast distances of space and time collapse on a single site. While penguins swim in ice-cold waters, only a few hundred meters away, primates swing from tree to tree in a tropical rainforest conditions. Secondly, boundaries and interfaces are a dominant feature in zoos. Visitors can co-inhabit the steel structure of the Snowdon aviary with large birds. Reptiles can be seen from behind the glass vitrine lining the walls of the historical reptile house, and ropes designate walking paths for humans in the inflatable butterfly paradise walk-through exhibit. Finally, in the zoo, the real natural and the authentic fake become indistinguishable, and this can be seen in its various heavily naturalized environments, as well as the unique construction method of artificial rock making. Yet zoos also promote a certain understanding of animals. In them, they are always exhibited in isolation, as curiosities from distant lands devoid of human context. But what about the animals that are already around, the ones in our parks, our streets, and our buildings? If the orthogonal, abrupt compartmentalization of space, its regularity and smooth and impermeable materiality exclude animals, then an architecture of habitat would perhaps be characterized by continuous surfaces, a diversity and irregularity of formations, a highly textured and porous materiality, and a multi-scalar space pertaining to scales both larger and smaller than human. So how can we produce geometrically complex and highly textured architectural elements? The project revisits the construction method of artificial rock making through digital design and fabrication means. And from a softer perspective, challenges yet another boundary representations, or the hollow containers devoid of materiality with which we all design space and architecture with through platforms like Rhino. Alternatively, the project engages with other modeling methods which allow for a more hands-on engagement with matter in its digital form, addressing qualities such as texture, roughness, and material depth. From a fabrication perspective, I explore how qualities of surface porosity can be achieved in concrete via analog means, such as dissolvable salt granulates. Varying degrees of surface porosity can be achieved by changing pore size and distribution patterns. These can then be digitally scanned for further evaluation, manipulation, and application onto architectural elements. A multi-scalar population strategy is distributed on the hotel's facade and translates into a new form of structure, comprised of individually prefabricated concrete elements cast from dissolvable 3D printed formworks. So in the New Park Lane Hotel, a series of passages for animals and vessels for vegetation, water, and soil are distributed vertically across the building's facade. Yet the structure enters the building, corrupts the existing floor plan, and replaces in certain parts columns, walls, and floor slabs. Based on the proximity to the intervention and its intensity, a new order of room emerges. Guests can inhabit rooms that remain unaltered, rooms with minor intrusions, partially naturalized, and fully naturalized rooms. At its most extreme, the hotel offers guests an opportunity to co-inhabit space with animals, unmediated through hard boundaries, barriers, and screens. It's a space that's filled with life, a space where one's senses are heightened by the sight, sound, and smell of animals and their associated environment. It's a tactile space where one can crawl and climb, in a way reconnecting to the lost animal within. In the mornings, guests can forage for breakfast before heading out to their days in the urban jungle. And upon their return in the evenings, they can plunge with frogs in the rooftop swamp. Animals perceive space radically different than we do. From different vantage points and in different scales, they navigate through it differently and they require a different set of conditions to survive in it. In an attempt to understand how animals respond to artificial construct, we transcend their own ways of thinking. As our vantage point shifts between human and non-human, we question our methods of design, and qualities that have been predominantly exempt from the built environment emerge. Animal space is a deep space. It's multi-layered, multi-scalar, tactile, and highly sensual, and although designed with animals in mind, simultaneously can also generate tremendous value for people.
Thank you, Raphael. We hope this gave you some kind of brief, let's say, idea of the type of work that we do in the Diploma School. If you have any other kind of questions, again, you can forward them to the admissions team. And other than that, yeah, thank you for joining us. And yeah, we look forward to meeting you soon.
Thank you.